Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
God isn't fixing this, as the latest batch of innocent Americans are left lying in pools of blood. Cowards who could truly end gun scourge continue to hide behind the meaningless platitudes. Welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Your host, Christopher Tanner, and your second host, Chris Hanna, join you tonight on this lovely, supposedly winter night to talk about a whole myriad of things. We're going to get into a Ken Ham article where he challenges the Daily News article about why God isn't fixing anything after the latest shootings. We are going to talk about GMOs and bees. We're going to talk political science, a brand new segment Chris Hanna had a great idea for, to talk about the difference and the switch between the Democratic and the Republican Party. And we're going to end with Sam Harris and internet rage. And boy, do we have a lot to say about that.
Surprisingly, in a decent consensus here. I expected there'd be a little bit more polarity, but it seems like we're on the same page.
Yeah. And so we bring you tonight a great episode, like we always do, because we have great episodes. We probably have a couple.
Well, yeah, we've
episodes.
had the Pope listen to us.
Yeah, we had the Pope listen to us. And last week, well, it was technically 2 weeks ago. We had a good friend of ours come up and join us for a wonderful segment that he was able to hang out and be a part of. Somebody that we've talked to for a little while. And if you listen to the last episode, you go back and listen to our thankfulness episode. So just a little bit to begin with before we get into our segments here, because I wanted to talk about some of the things that have been going on and some of the things that you're going to see. So if you like what we do, you're more than welcome to sponsor us on Patreon. It's not so that we make money. It's not so that we can retire or not have to work, because I can't leave my job. And Chris really can't leave his job because he owns his own fucking business. Yeah. But we want the Patreon so we can help support charities more. We want to be able to bring a presence in the atheist community and the secular community to help support charities, and we want to help make that difference. We also want to bring to light, the situation that has recently happened in San Diego. And by the time you listen to this, we record our stuff about a week in advance. So this is very fresh in our minds. I mean, this happened only 2 days ago, and is very disturbing. We've had the mass shooting in France. We've had a mass shooting in, Libya. We've had a mass shooting in Beirut. And now we've had a mass shooting in San Diego. And then that doesn't even count some of the shootings that have happened in Georgia. There's a shooting that happened in Georgia where some kids shot up a park over a gang warfare. And yes, I'm mentioning it. And that's just within, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. And I can't even wrap my head around this at some point. At some point, I just stop and go, what the fuck? And so what brought about this is that people are getting sick of this. This is starting to touch home. People are starting to realize we're having more shootings, mass shootings within a year than we've had in a long time.
Yeah, we're at 355 according to the consensus or the census, whatever the statistics that keep track of this. The last number I saw was 355. Now, that it's kind of got some open space there because the definition for mass shooting is multiple people being shot or shot at or injured or things like that. So some of the times what we would say is like gang warfare, or what you would see in big cities and urban sprawls where we have violent areas. Some of those shootings that we would say is it's just like a regular shooting. If a regular shooting is a word that could ever make any sense in my mind. But the smaller shootings, and those are actually paired with these 14, 15, 30 people shootings. And so that number is really high, even though some of the shootings are 5, 6 people, which a shooting of anybody, more than one person, or even one person is bad, obviously. But that number is really, really big. And I was talking with some people about it earlier this morning. And so like the mass shooting number is massive. And I don't know where the line is between what we would say is traditional shootings and this influx and these people who are really taking out large groups of people. I don't know. It's just something I wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, and then what's really important about that is that whether we define mass shooting as 2 or 3 people, or we define mass shooting as 10
shooting.
or more, it's still a shooting. It's still warfare, in my opinion, to a point. And what we're looking at here is we have to sit there and think, wow, what kind of a God would let this happen, right? We've talked about child cancer before, and we're going to have an interview with Jeremiah Bannister from Paleo Radio about him and his daughter. And she got diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer at the beginning of this year. But we actually have to stop and think about it. And so this New York Daily article presented a meme, basically why God isn't fixing this. And it's just a Twitter thing, and it's not like some in-depth article that you're going to go, holy shit, there's 7,000 words that just touched home. But people are getting sick of this. People are getting sick of shootings. And all people are talking about is, hey, let's pray for that. Or, hey, my good thoughts are going to this. No one gives a fuck about your prayers. If it makes you feel good, that's great.
I saw something that said there's some people standing out in front of the Capitol. It's a comic, obviously, and it said we're gonna double our prayers and we're gonna triple our thoughts and feelings that we send out to the people. It's like, really, isn't there something about the ruling of multiplying by 0 that does, So yeah, continue.
and so yeah, but you're exactly right. I mean, what does prayer do? There's been no scientific studies that shows prayers work. And I know that the religious people would crucify me, and if John Mosman's listening to this, I would probably get a 30-minute lecture on why I'm wrong on this aspect.
Intercessory prayer has been tested by major universities, and like there's one, the biggest one that I remember was heart surgeries, and people had heart problems or whatever, and they showed that the people who knew they were being prayed for actually did worse. They did worse because there was pressure and stress and all this kind of stuff. The studies are there, so whenever people say, oh no, you're wrong, I just point them to the scientific studies.
Yeah, but not everybody believes those, Chris, and that's the problem.
Well, yeah,
and
science deniers. We've got so many of those.
We both know that that's a problem, but it gets to the point where I think we're starting to see a change in society to the point where we go, hey, hold on. We can't all just pray. If we're all going to pray, it's not going to change anything. If we're all going to sit here and go, hey, thank God. Oh, thank you. Oh, hey, I'm so sorry that this happened. Let me say a prayer for you. At some point, God's either a malignant fuck, that doesn't give a shit.
I don't believe that's how Epicurus put it, but that's close enough.
Yeah, but it's exactly right, though. And that epithet, that discussion, that thought process is something that we have to examine. We have to at least look at it. And maybe it's just platitudes. Maybe it's this, I don't know, maybe it's just this horrible, horrible, insensitive atheist sitting here behind a computer yelling through his fucking microphone. Maybe it's just that. But on the opposite note,
we've got a guy like Ken Ham.
Yeah, we got a guy like Ken Ham. We got a guy like Ken Ham that wants to refute this. And this just touched a nerve, and I'm sure my cousin's not listening to this because he's the one that shared it. And if you are, I challenge you to join me on my podcast. I've done it before. You don't want to, but I challenge you, join me on my podcast. But somebody shared this on my Facebook feed, and I had to read the article. And it's not very long. It says it's by Ken Ham, but there's quite a bit of other individuals who have.
Yeah, it says at the end that it was put together by him and his research team because he couldn't handle like 600 words on his own.
Yeah, and it's not an in-depth article, but he says this morning's cover of the New York Daily News references the tragic shooting in San Bernardino, California, that left at least 14 dead and several wounded. It shows tweets from politicians referencing prayers for the victims, but boldly declares God isn't fixing this. The front page, he says, of this major newspaper, which I don't know if this is a major newspaper. I'll be honest. I guess I don't read enough fucking newspapers. I get my
New York
information.
I think New York has
from that.
I think New York has like 6.
Yeah. So if this is a very liberal one, yes,
we're a fan.
Maybe we should fucking
I think
read
we're
this
a fan.
magazine. But he says it's mocking God and it's mocking Christianity. Well, why is it mocking God? How the fuck is it mocking God? Think about this. How the fuck is that mocking God? If God is really there and he doesn't want to show himself or he doesn't want to do anything, it's not mocking him. It's just pointing out the fact that he's being absentee or he's willingly let this go on. And he says the only thing I can agree with in this whole article, he says it clearly shows where our culture is at today, as America has become more secular in its utter rejection of God and an ignorance of his word. And I want to applaud Ken Ham. He has actually said, something amazing here. He's actually admitted that we're becoming a more secular nation. He's admitted this to the world now. So we can at least go, hey, Ken, by the way, you already said that we're coming to more secular nation. You got to at least stand behind them.
Well, also, like, let's say Ken Ham's sad by this, right? Well, this is the fifth step of denial, or of grief. He actually went through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and he is now in acceptance. Essentially, he's accepted his grief that the United States is becoming less and less Christian. I'm okay with that. Good job, Ken. You've worked your way through the whole process, and maybe you're going to be a better person because of it.
Yeah. Which is good, because that shows evolution, right, Chris, or adaptation. I mean, we can pick which it is, which part of evolution do you want to talk about? But that's kind of what that is, right?
Maybe he's just becoming a little bit more well-rounded of a person as opposed to a 2D caricature of a shadow made by an Asian book. So,
yeah, and he goes on to explain what we've tossed out, and he goes, our culture refuses to acknowledge we're living in a fallen world. And although God's not responsible for these tragedies we see, God created this perfect world that was ruined by mankind's sin. It's our fault in Adam. So basically, you're fucking saying it's Adam's fault, right? It's Adam and Eve's fault. You can pick which person you want to blame or blame both. It doesn't fucking matter, right, Ken? Right? Isn't that right? You're just going to blame somebody else because you can't accept your own faults. You can't accept the fact that you're the one that has issues. You still have to condescend and transmute it off to somebody else. You gotta say, I'm a sinner, but it's still Adam's fault. Well, fuck you, Ken Ham. Why don't you grow up and take responsibility for your own actions? I mean, that's what a lot of the secular community does. We cast off our Christian nature, and we move into an acceptance that we control to a point our fate. We control how we can act, how moral we can be. And he wants to go on and talk about God's absolute authority. Well, God's absolute authority allowed this to happen. So God's being punitive then. Well, so he closes with this Bible verse that says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people he has chosen as his inheritance. We need to pray for the nation. You need to pray? You need to pray. You haven't proven anything. So, Ken, you just sat there. You just fucking sat there and said we need to turn around and become a more Christian nation. And then you turn around and say, hey, let's pray for that. Let's pray for our neighbors. Let's pray for these people. Let's pray. So you're telling me prayer works, but it doesn't work. But it does work, but we need to become a Christian nation. I'm confused. Chris, are you confused? This is confusing to me.
Well, it sounds like a bicycle wheel. I mean, he is doing a circular argument there. He's saying that God is basically in charge of all of this stuff, but he didn't do the natural disasters recently. He doesn't specifically do that stuff. So, well, which is it? I mean, it's like I said a little while ago with Epicurus. Is God willing but unable? Then he's not omnipotent. Is he unwilling but able? Then he's malevolent. Is he both willing and able? Then is he unwilling and unable? Then he is evil. And if he is able and willing, and then where does evil come from? And then the last one is, if he is unwilling and unable to prevent evil, then why should we call him God? It's the old Epicurean thing. It's like, essentially it's the circular argument that God is great and does all these great things, but why does evil exist? It's as simple as that. And I usually throw people at that. They like to throw this Ken Ham argument that, well, it's all bad, but we can get this prayer stuff to work. Well, how come the prayer stuff doesn't work? Because you're saying that there still are Christian people that are trying to fix everything and make everything great. I just don't know where Ken Ham can complete his circle, but at least he's making small steps in progress towards just accepting the United States is not going to be a giant arc theme park.
Hey, we don't want that, because maybe God's going to flood the world, and that ark's only going to hold so many damn people, right? If he does flood the world.
He might flood the world, because I just butchered Epicurus, but either way.
So my biggest thing is, and I sit here, and this is a challenge, right? To me, this is Ken Ham challenging people. He just isn't being ballsy enough to say it. So I'll challenge your people for you, Ken. You guys want a Christian nation. You want to live like God. Well, why don't you fucking put some standards out there? Say, this is exactly what. Why don't you come to this universal fucking American standard where you're like, hey, let's try an experiment. Let's put some steps in process.
Let's use
right?
the golden rule, like we all like to say.
Yeah, fuck the golden rule, right? Let's go farther than the golden rule, Chris, because the golden rule isn't anything that's that much different between secular people and Christian people, right? The golden rule can be used by anybody. I'm saying test your fucking God. Test your Christian thing. Put some goddamn examples on there. You're making a claim, Ken Ham. You're making a claim that you know that how we're supposed to act and how we can get rid of these mass shootings, right? You're making this fucking claim, so why don't you put some goddamn statistics behind it? Because we know they aren't going to hold up. So fine, fuck your statistics. Let's take and make an experiment out of this. Why don't you sit there and say, here's exactly what we need to do to get rid of this. Let's change public policy, right, Ken Ham? Go ahead, take this, put a plan together, doing this and this and this, and here's your timeline for it, and put this timeline in there. That way we have some way to benchmark it. Because if we turn back to God of the Bible, is this really going to be fixed? That's my question. So, Ken Ham, why don't you lay out some actual guidelines, something that we can go, yes, we're going to follow this script, and this is how long we're going to follow it for. And if it works, I'll tell you what, you made me a fucking believer. Even if that God is some sadistic asshole, which that's what I feel if he exists, the Bible dictates. At least at that point, we could say, hey, we've solved the God argument. The God of the Christian Bible is real. And then we could turn around and say, if you're wrong, if we do all these things and you're wrong, then why don't you give up? Why don't you get the fuck out of America? Why don't you go somewhere else? Why don't you create your own fucking island? Why don't you become the new fucking ISIS? And how about that? Why don't you get the fuck out of America and stop telling us that, hey, if we do this, it'll change? Because why don't we take that test? Why don't we take that challenge and actually move to that point so that if it does exist, great. If it doesn't, then you can all shut the fuck up and goddamn quit. You can shut the fuck up and quit claiming that you're right and that people are just so more secular than they used to be. Because if that's not the case, if that's not the fucking case, Ken Ham, then in reality, all you're doing is blowing a bunch of hot air. And instead of fucking blowing it at us through the internet or, well, through your AIG writers, why don't you fucking throw it into a hot air balloon? And we could start airlifting some of these Syrian refugees or some of these other people who don't want to live in these third world countries into ours and actually helping them kind of like what Jesus said to do.
Well, we just earned our explicit tag for the night, man.
Nice
rant.
We aggressively earned that.
I didn't expect the Ken Ham rant coming through. I agree quite a bit. You may have just told Ken Ham to write his own version of Mein Kampf, which does scare me a little bit. But I'm
not saying to give him control. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want him to have the control.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, like, essentially, if Ken Ham was told to write his solution to everything, I have a very sneaky suspicion that it would probably read a lot like the Old Testament, as far as its callousness and its candor. So it probably would be a little bit scary. Either way, I would love to hear specific arguments from some of these people as to how they think we, by doing these things, that we're going to supersede and increase the overall morality and find this loving world that supposedly would result from this, even though a lot of their beliefs are exclusionary by principle. They exclude people from the country. So how could they ever completely and comfortably enjoy a nice, healthy United States while they exclude people based on their black and white belief systems in some cases? It doesn't exist. So what they're looking for is they're looking for God to give them exactly what they want and really nothing else. They need their solutions. That's what it is. It's got to be black and white. And I don't think that they, even if he had found some really nice way to make the United States a comfortable place for everyone, that it would not be inclusive. And so Ken Ham's idea of helping everyone, it's helping everyone like him. I don't think it's helping everyone like refugees and minorities and alternative lifestyle, homosexuals, different types of sexual genders, and everything like that. I really don't think Ken means those people. I think he just means people like him, like the Rand Paul, more freedom for people like me.
And you're exactly right, Chris. I mean, this is not a reality. If he really did this, I'm sure I would not be able to support this in any way, shape, or form. But I'm all for him proposing something, and let's look at it, and let's see if this is reasonable. I mean, we could put measurements in place and temporarily suspend things and do certain things in different ways. But you're right. You know what it would do? It would air out the fact that if the Christian God was real, that it's not an all-loving God. It's not an all-inclusive God. That it's not a God that loves you and wants to embrace you and make you feel at home. It's a God of punitive. It's a God of anger. It's a God of jealousy. Well, fuck, the Bible even says that. It's a God that makes me cringe at my fucking core. That's what that God is.
I'm just skeptical that he even exists. I mean, you could push him back beyond the universe, and so it's no longer the personal God. But, you know, the first mover, the arguments of that nature, the more we learn, the more we have, there's just less and less of a likeliness of that personal God who's involved in our daily activities, and who cares whether or not I touch my tender bits. You know, I like the anthropomorphic idea that we are this super important thing in the universe, but in the end, like these guys can harp and bark all they want. It's when they get into the politics that's when it affects me directly. But if they want to believe their stuff and write their blogs and have all their stuff out there, that's fine. Keep doing that. But we all can have that freedom to do that. And so the Ken Ham idea that we should all be good, cool, great, that's awesome. If you, in turn, will leave me alone, as Christopher Hitchens says. But, as religion has shown time and time again, it just can't do that. It won't do that. So, I think, can we kick the horse anymore? Is it possible to kick Ken Ham anymore?
No, Chris. I don't think we can actually kick that horse any more than we've kicked it. But it doesn't mean that it's not fun to kick it a little bit. But the music's telling me. The music's playing. It's going crazy. And it's telling me we got to get the fuck out of this segment. And we got to get into the next one. So we'll be right back to talk more about bees and the further argument against pesticides. What? We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Stick around for more fucking awesomeness. Explicit tag included. We'll be right back, everyone.
This is Heretic Woman, part of the panel of Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to another segment on Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you guys, girls, and everybody who listens to this for joining us for another amazing episode. We had to bring a little bit of post-punk in. I just couldn't help myself. We're a little reminiscent. It's got to calm down from that first segment where I kind of went off on Ken Ham. And we're having a conversation about bees. What's more relaxing, Chris, than a conversation on bees? Actually, that's probably not relaxing at all.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I can't think of something that would probably scare more people, maybe make them freak out. It's just a bunch of bees possibly inside a house in a room. I know some people that are allergic, and there's a genuine freak out whenever you see one of those humble little, helpful little monsters rolling around in your general vicinity, invading your personal space, so to speak.
And maybe soon they'll create vaccines, right, to help some of those people. We'll get some vaccines, help cure some of the allergicness to bees. I used to think I was allergic to bees, and I haven't been stung in quite a while, so maybe I still am, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, because I think I stepped on one, and I never had to go to the hospital, and I had one sting my arm, and never had to go to the hospital, and then...
Yeah, if you had to go to the hospital, there's a good chance you're pretty allergic. I mean, it might not be deathly allergic, like if you smell a peanut, your head will explode or something, But
Why would does it ever happen? Is it just like an illogical analogy? Nobody's head explodes from a peanut.
no, close enough. I don't know. Little kids die in sad movies with Macaulay Culkin in them when they get stung by bees. So I just assume that little kids die.
What movie's that? I guess I missed that.
My
one.
Girl, man.
Never seen it. So
Well, I don't know. This is a random 1990 something movie reference because my brain remembers things that are really unimportant and unnecessary.
do you remember
why,
The Good Son?
Like why Macaulay Culkin? Yes, he was awesome in The Good
Love that
Son.
movie. Best movie ever. Okay,
It
not
was a good
best
one.
movie ever. Almost best movie ever.
Elijah Wood is in it, right?
Yeah,
Isn't he,
yes, he's the
number
other
two?
little kid. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I saw that movie once. I remember it because like my parents were like, "You're too young to see this movie."
We definitely were not allowed to watch that. I found that when I got a lot older.
That was a freaky movie. It was freaky. He was creepy. It was like The Omen, but it was like if the Home Alone kid was in The Omen.
Yeah, the whole kids in the Omen. And the problem is that there was no supernatural aspect to it. The kid was just a fucking devious kid, kind of like bees. Bees are kind of devious.
Oh, they're awesome. Bees are amazing and they're great. And this is the reason why I wanted to do this segment. And I'm making this statement up front right now. This is a really, really awesome thing that happened for this. I came into this thinking bees are great, bees are wonderful, and they're in decline. They're being murdered. They're just getting destroyed, pesticides and disease and all this kinds of stuff. I went into this thinking that it's a major problem. And this article was a great article from the Harvard. It was a Harvard HSPH, and we'll have the link in there. It's just a big nasty link, but they're saying that these neonicotinoids, which is a pesticide, is causing like I would say like nerve gas types effects. They were making bees desert their colonies and all kinds of horrible things that you really don't want to be happening when it comes to the most important pollinators in the United States or North America. And so I came into this thinking this was going to be terrible. All these horrible things are happening. Well, this yeah, you're Snapchatting right now. Is that what you're doing?
I'm
You
not
have
Snapchatting.
to. We're trying to get some exciting stuff. We get pictures and stuff so they're in the action because we don't do video anymore. But anyways, back to the bees. I thought that this article is basically it's like a doomsday article. Everything is terrible. These things are murdering, killing bees. And the first time I read it, I was like, wow, we need to say this. We need to talk about this and bring this story out. Talk about the scientific findings. This is Harvard. This is a big science name. Went through it. I read a second article in support of it, basically resourcing or sourcing this article, and it's scientific data. And so I said, this is great. And I looked up some refutations. It's usually the second thing I do. And the refutations destroyed the science. I mean, just absolutely annihilated them. Broke down the experiments, what they did at the beginning, and they didn't find the results they wanted. The bees were acting as they should be if the pesticides were not dangerous. And then all of a sudden they upped the dosage by it should be the dosage itself should be 1 to 4 parts per million, and they found that they had significantly increased the dosage because they weren't getting what they wanted. So initially, right off the bat,
hold
the
on.
science
So
is
we
bad.
got to stop because you're talking about dosages, and I'm thinking pots or alcohol. And you're talking dosages. So what's this dosage that we're talking about?
Okay, so what they were doing was feeding these bees stuff that was kind of laced with these neonicotinoids. So essentially, it would be in the pollen, on the food inside the flowers that the bees are eating. And so at the beginning, they were getting a normal dose. It's what you would expect, maybe a little bit higher than you would expect in the natural world.
Okay,
but
so also, why were they using this neonicotinoids? What's the significance of that?
Well, neonicotinoids are a specific type of pesticide that helps with a variety of things, but it doesn't do what the old school chemicals used to do. They were kind of like taking a shotgun to a sniping range or something. So like you're just spraying this destruction, as opposed to a sniping a rifle or something, which would very precision and precise attack something and not do a lot of damage. The old chemicals that we used to use would destroy stuff. They were dangerous for humans. They were dangerous for animals. They were dangerous for bugs. They were dangerous for birds. Everything. And so these new neonicotinoids are they're very effective and very specialized in what they do. And so they wanted to test these because this guy, his name is
you gotta look at your notes, don't you?
yeah.
You don't remember the guy's name, do you?
Well, it's Chen Sing Lu. It's
There
not
you-
a normal American name, man.
So hold on though. We still got to intro this. I think you're jumping ahead of the game here a little bit because
A little bit.
the whole point of this, right, is what's the reason behind using the nicotinoids? Because they want to change and they want to figure out what the issue is. Is that what it is? They got to figure out if these new pesticides are as bad as the old pesticides. Is that what they're trying to disprove or prove?
More than likely, it's they think that there's a new problem that these new pesticides are creating. I'm trying to look through the data here, and it says that in 2006, I believe it was, they started finding that bees were deserting their colonies, and this is something that usually happens in the winter months when they've moved on, the hive is fully stocked, or if they need to leave to let the larvae. Because bees are really, really, really devoted would be a good word.
Yeah,
They will wander off
they were
to their death.
They were losing their colonies. So that's what everybody was trying to figure out is why they were losing their colonies. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so they're trying to find why this. I believe it was 2007. There's 2006, and they were trying to find why were they having these mass desertions. And so they're assuming it before the study started. They were assuming that these new neonicotinoids were causing a problem. And it says it's a relatively new class of insecticides. It's a common mode of action that affect the central nervous system of insects, resulting in paralysis and death. They include, there's no point in really reading all these scientific terms, but specifically what it is, it's like I said a little while ago, it's like a nerve gas for bugs. And what it does is it kind of drives them away, or it affects their nerves, and so it kind of paralyzes them or neutralizes them. Well, they were thinking that they initially planned that these things would be safe for bees and that they wouldn't be consumed in a large enough quantity that they would affect the bees. And then after the chemicals that they used in the past were kind of pushed to the side of these new things, this Chen Sing Lu came out with this study, and this study was shared everywhere. It was an immediate, massive success. And everybody, it's Harvard. It's got to be fact checked. It was shared in a article or in a magazine, and in the refutation articles, they said that the magazine they shared on, which is it's an Italian magazine. I'm trying to bring it up right now.
While he's bringing his notes up that he didn't obviously prepare well enough for,
I can't remember all the names of these things.
The whole point of this is that, so the real issue here is that people created a pesticide. They wanted to kill the bugs off because we want to, basically make our food grow better. And we can get into sometime why people think pesticides are bad. We're not going to do that tonight, yada, yada, yada. But in this science segment, people found out that they were affecting bees. And this was a big thing. I'll be honest, this is a pretty big thing that came about. My wife and I had these conversations quite a bit, like, oh my God, we're losing bees. Oh my God. To a point, bees are one of the most awesome God's creation beings in the world. Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong podcast. But really, bees are very fucking amazing because what they do is they transmit all these things and they create cross-pollinate and they help evolution work basically on such a great level that without bees we could lose our whole civilization or the majority of it. Probably some of us would survive. Probably not the atheists. The Christians would probably kill us first, but they got to eat something, right? We ate babies, they eat atheists, same thing. But that's the whole thing. Is that bees are such an imperative part that when some of these studies started to emerge years ago, we got sidetracked. We wanted to get interested in this because, for fuck's sake, I don't want to not live. I'm not going to remember it when I'm dead. But I at this point, I want to enjoy myself as much as I can.
Well, yeah.
And that's the whole point of this segment is, so Chris, in a few seconds here, Chris is going to debunk it. He's going to actually debunk all these other findings, and he's going to come to a revelation that he's going to share with everybody.
Well, basically what I started off was I had a complete 180. I planned on this thing being this proof. I wanted to give out data and information as to why the bees were being affected by these neonicotinoids. The article that was published by Chen Sing Lu was published in an obscure magazine called the Bulletin of Insectology. And the Huffington Post article that I use for my major source of refutation is the one that really beat this thing up. And the big thing was that they talked about the amounts of chemicals that were given to these bees. And so Randy Oliver, a well-known beekeeper, wrote in his scientific beekeeping blog, and I will put the link to that. And it's actually in the Huffington Post as well, so you should read this because it's really, really good. But Lou fed his test colonies a pesticide brew of about 135 parts per billion. That's 100 times the 1 to 3 parts per billion found in in pollen or nectar. So essentially, at the beginning, they were feeding them a low amount. That's what you would expect in nature. And then when they weren't getting what they wanted, they upped the dose to 135 parts per billion, 100 times what they should have been for an actual real-world scenario. Of course you're going to have bee die-offs and bee desertions when you're drugging them beyond anything they would ever come into contact with in the real world. And
it's not even good drugs, right? It's shitty drugs. It's like it doesn't make them get high. It just kind of kills them.
Well, it says what's remarkable, the numerous scientists and beekeepers told me that Lou's bees didn't just keel over in the first few weeks of sucking down what amounted to a lethal cocktail every day. It's amazing that they lived as long as they did, let alone
damn, I want some bee genes.
That these neonicotinoids are bad. It's the old idea that too much of anything will kill you. Well, this should have killed this. I mean, this should have killed him. It really should have done. And so there was also scant evidence to back up Lou's central claim that had solved the mystery of this desertion. It's called CCD. His description of the hives didn't show that. Is what University of Maryland entomologist Dennis Van Egelsdorp told the author of the Huffington Post. Bee die-offs, he says, have occurred mysteriously and periodically since the mid-19th century, but they become the focus of widespread public concern only since 2006, when they initially observed that desertion. And so it's clear that when Lou observed bee deaths, it was not what CCD looks like in a typical bee colony, the death over the winter, which often includes bees abandoning the hive. But it's a slow dwindle, not a sudden collapse. And so this is what I've always talked about when I call them bad scientists or bad science, is they're starting with the conclusion. This Chensing Liu guy, when I looked through a few more articles, they're saying that he is the outspoken, he is the guy that is the neonicotinoids are the devil, the evil. He doesn't specifically say that, but this is what he's emoting, that these things are the worst things. These are the problem for sure, 100%. And so he went into this study and he basically repeated doing the same thing, and he went into the study looking for this negative solution, and he fought and mushed around with the science until he got what he wanted. So essentially, he started off falsely and incorrectly in as far as the scientific study was conducted. And so that was my big revelation. I couldn't believe that this guy had, and it's been pushed away through most science, but the media has perpetuated this and shared it so much that I saw it. Mother Jones, the website, was adamantly just absolutely holding out on this one. They would not budge, and they would not rescind what they had announced, that this guy had discovered the solution to this bee collapse and bee just desertion of the hives.
Yeah, and that's what bothers me sometimes, is what the best thing about science is that it refutes itself at some point. At some point, if a new theory comes along that replaces the old theory, it's better. And we shouldn't shy away from this shit. We should go, oh no, our intelligence is being shattered. It's kind of like that whole parents hate when their kids are smarter than thing. I wish for it. I want my fucking kids to be smarter than me, not because I want to be dumb, but because I want a brighter future. And if my kids are smarter than me, and I think I'm smart, maybe, then,
You're getting there.
Getting kind of close. A little bit more pot, and, I might have it. But the whole point is that if they get smarter, they're smarter than me, that means, evolution's working, but it means that we can see a better society. It means we have a higher probability that society will succeed. And so it befuddles me why I get why they don't want to rescind it, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be rescinded, or at least acknowledge that new science has helped correct some of the misconceptions of before.
Yeah, a well-informed populace is a scientific literate populace. This is a good thing for society to learn and cast aside their previous possibly false beliefs or incorrect understandings and use the new data. That's the definition of science, is you make your new hypothesis and your new thesis and your new theories and all of your laws and stuff based on the new data. When the new data oversteps the old stuff. One of the other big things that really caught my eye on this is this study. Okay, entomology is the study of insects. It's the study of bees. It's the study of these kinds of things. On this
definitely
team,
not a field for me to be in.
on this team, the Chensing Liu, on his team, there were no entomologists. There were no insect experts, PhDs, the people you want.
Shit, it sounds like the IRC or AIG. I mean,
I know.
Oh, God
yeah, it's
damn.
like I'm a geology, or I'm a philosophy PhD, but I'm going to write this geology paper. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Because this Chensing Liu guy, yeah, he had 2 beekeepers who were his teammates on this, and so that was the level of expertise as far as the bugs are concerned here. That's really that. And the other thing is, I mentioned that obscure Italian magazine is because the major article or the major magazines like Science, they said no. They said they didn't want anything to do with it. So it was brushed aside, and it was rejected by what we consider our scientific population in the United States. And so he had to go outside the country to a strange little place, to a little magazine that is it's usually pay to play. Like, you give them enough money and they'll publish your article. So that was the finding that, okay, one, that needs to be peer reviewed, and of course it was peer reviewed by the science people who said no, this isn't any good. And it's overwhelming. The scientific community says no, but the media, like I said, has latched on to a story like this, and they caught me. They had me. I was thinking that this was bee genocide out there, and it's not. Throughout the Huffington Post article, there's statistics that bee colonies and bee numbers have stabilized in the United States. If anything, they're growing a little bit. And Europe right now has just recently banned these neonicotinoids for a short time period trial to see if it helps with the bee colonies. And as far as I know, and up to the most recent point, they're actually having some negative consequences already. And they just started reducing these neonicotinoids, and they're going to have to go back to the old chemicals they used to use. So we'll see some very new results very soon in the this little time study or trial that's happening in Europe.
Yeah, and that's just the whole thing of this, right? They corrected it, and I'll tell you, don't feel too bad. I got sucked into the whole GMO thing. I was pretty fucking anti-GMO, and I know we've had this conversation on the show before. And if
we're not 100% for them either. Like, we think there should be some more studies. There should be more stuff looked into, but I don't think there's like, if you eat a GMO apple, that you're going to turn into the Swamp Thing or something. Like, we know that fear campaign stuff is wrong. We're not 100% supporting anything, really. It's just, we know that it's not as bad as what the fear campaign has said it is, but we do need some more studies, and we need to keep testing it and make sure it's safe. I believe that's fair enough anyways.
But we all do. We all get sucked into this, and we all have biases, and without our biases, we wouldn't be who we are, right? I mean, that's just, it is what it is, right? And that's the problem, is that if we don't acknowledge that, if we don't accept what it is, if we don't know where we're going to be, if we just sit here and pretend like, oh no, we're 100% correct, where are we at, right?
Well, if you're never wrong, you never grow.
Yeah.
Like, if you're never wrong, that means you never learn something new. Because the only way you can learn something new is either to not know anything about it, or to prove your previous beliefs false. Those are the only two ways you can learn something. And so either you're right, you didn't know anything about it, or your previous beliefs are incorrect and now you have to adjust them. I don't know any other way to intellectually grow. And what happened when I started doing research for this was a great thing. I love when I learn something like this, and now I'm not going to spout the bees are dying.
And the bees are dying. The bees are dying, but they're really not. And
it's not an M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's not.
It's not about the movie. It's not where the guy from Seinfeld comes and makes his big crisis about it, right?
Mark Wahlberg is not going to say this.
He's not. But we are going to hear a song for Jay-Z, as you are hearing right now, as we walk out of this segment and move into the next segment. We want to make sure you stick around for more Cellar Door Skeptics, because when we come back from this quick commercial break, we're going to talk about political science, how Democrats became Democrats. We'll be right back, everyone.
Hey, my name is Wesley. I'm from the Atheist Nomads podcast. Kick back a while and listen to my friends on the Cellar Door Skeptics.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
During the 1860s, Republicans who dominated northern states orchestrated ambitious expansion of federal power, helping to fund the Transcontinental Railroad, the state university system, and the settlement of the West by homesteaders, and instilling a national currency and protective tariff. Democrats who dominated the South opposed these measures. After the Civil War, Republicans passed laws that granted protection for African Americans and advanced social justice. Again, Democrats largely opposed these expansions of power. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. We're going to have a conversation. We are. Because we always do, right? We always have a conversation. But we're going to have a conversation about the Democrats and the Republicans and how they switch sides. And I tried to tell Chris before we started, all about this, right? I tried to tell him about how I never even knew this was a divide. This was not like something that I saw or I felt. I just didn't really think about it.
You didn't think there was a difference between Democrats and Republicans?
No, you fucking idiot.
Where's
Jesus.
the divide? Are you saying Democrats
I didn't
and
see
Republicans
the divide
switched?
between how Democrats became Republicans.
Oh.
And Republicans became Democrats. Because to me, I was always told, Republicans believe this way, it's a conservative nature, this is how everything is. I never even heard or thought or saw about the Democratic side really until I kind of ventured out on my own.
So you've never had an idea that there was like an evolution of the parties themselves?
No, I never saw that. That never was something that even remotely crossed my mind. It would just it was what it was. I had a belief system that I had with my parents granted me, I guess, if you want to call it that way. And then my belief system started to evolve, and I started to become more socialistic and on my understandings. But I didn't know that the Republicans had switched sides and the Democrats had switched sides. I thought that was bullshit. And I'll be honest, on its face, it makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't make any fucking sense in any way, shape, or form.
That's why I wanted to talk about it. I've known about this for a while. I've known some of the history, and I had never really seen a really good explanation as to why it happened. I knew that it happened during the FDR time periods. With the major switch between like the perspective, and this is a Live Science article that I saw, and it was written by a Natalie Wolkover, and she basically, after the intro that Chris gave a minute ago, she said this sounds like an alternate universe, does it not? And it really does. If you think about the position or what we are seeing from the Republicans and the Democrats as far as their perspectives and the areas of politics that they are dominant in. I knew that they had switched, but I couldn't find anything really good. And so this is the first one that I've seen that did a really nice job explaining it. The conclusions at the end are just they're thick and warm and fuzzy, and you feel like you know you got what you expected when you saw that title. That, why did Democratic and Republican parties switch platforms? The big thing in this one is one that I really never thought about is the economic side of these things. Like Chris said, the Republicans were all about these large expansions of federal powers, getting this transcontinental radar, the state university systems, and so we're talking about infrastructure here. The Republicans in this time period were big business. They were big businessmen, and they needed infrastructure. And the best people to build infrastructure is the centralized federal government. And they started doing it. They used them, and they did a very, very good job. And some of the best times we had as far as prosperity in the United States is when we were building these really, really strong infrastructural systems. And so the Republicans really wanted that because they're big business. The Democrats were more for the little guy, and at the time they were farmers, and so they didn't want this massive government, which surprised me because obviously now the Democrats really do like a large government, and it became an economic thing. And Chris, did you know it was like an economic driver, or was it more like a slavery thing that you had thought about in the past, or something along those lines?
Honestly, I guess I never realized that the Republicans weren't slave owners per se, that the Republicans dominated the North. I mean, that didn't cross my mind, because when I thought about the Democrats or the Republicans, I remember my father having this lecture with me. We had to have this conversation about how he didn't believe in affirmative action. And I didn't understand why. I argued with him, and he was bitching about Clinton and how Clinton's for this, and it's going to ruin our economy, and blah, 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 blah. And I worked hard for my degree, and I've worked hard for my position, and I just took it for granted. I was 14 years old, sitting in a car listening to fucking Rush Limbaugh, for Christ's sake. Fucking Rush Limbaugh. Anyway, I never thought about it because I always thought affirmative action didn't work. I didn't think it was a logical conclusion. And it took me a while to come to that place. I'll admit it. It took me a while to move into that understanding and accept that minorities are having a harder time than I am because I'm fucking white.
It's got to be tough.
And I got a penis.
It's got to be tough. It's got to be tough coming to that conclusion, basically living in an echo chamber. I mean, you were in a bubble. So we've talked a little bit about your evolution out of that, but that's got to be incredibly tough. Just finding where did you get little bits and pieces that gave you ideas?
Public school, public school.
Oh,
I'll tell
man.
you what, public school is amazing, dude. I don't know. I've always kind of been a rebel. I've always bucked the system in some way, shape, or form. It's always happened.
Having a problem with
yeah, I have. I'm a big anarchist for the most part. When it came back then, now I'm not so much an anarchist. Although I guess libertarians are very close to that anarchy line. But for me, it was. For me, it was the understanding and the coming to the fact of the acceptance that there's others that are different than me that deserve the same respect as I do. And that I can't be right about everything. And that some of the people that I loved, that I was friends with, were being discriminated against. And I had a really hard time with it. And I go back to this all the time. It was LGBT people was one of the first things that gave me a clue that maybe Christianity is bullshit, right? That was probably the first thing that set in with me. And I had a really hard time moving past that, honestly. But it was some of the other things. It was the minorities. I grew up with Republicans. I went to a very conservative church. We had these types of conversations. And it was really hard for me to move past some of that at first because it violated everything I believed in, everybody I knew, people I hung out with. I mean, I used to go every Friday night out to Grand Haven with a bunch of friends from the church, and we'd blast Christian ghetto music. I'll have to play it for you sometime. My God, it's some of the shit I used to listen to is just awful. But
yeah, every once in a while when I'm hanging out over here after we're done recording, he'll throw on something from the.
I do not do that to him. Oh,
not like he wants to listen to it seriously. No, he'll just like, dude, you got to see. This is what I used to listen to, and I've never seen anything like it. It really does surprise me just about everything.
Just wait. I'm gonna find my band CD. I was in a Christian ska band in high school. I have a CD we recorded at Cornerstone College. For those of you who are local here, you know where that is. I recorded. I was in a battle of the bands at Cornerstone College. I play trombone, or I used to. I don't really play trombone. Fuck up. I play trombone. I'm a boner. It is what it is. But I have. How about this? $5 if you can guess the name of my band.
You told me once, but I immediately burned that memory from my brain.
All right, I'll double it. $10 if you can guess the name of my band.
Tromboners.
No, but bump fail. No, we were called Empty Hand
Oh man.
because we come empty-handed to God.
I immediately
so far off the segment. We're
I
like
know.
we ran down the rails. We just was like, hey, now we're talking about his past Christian music.
get back onto the so we went off on a tangent, just like how you had kind of found your own space. But getting back to the thought bubble that you were in, so to speak, this Live Science article. There's a guy named Eric Rockway, I believe it's Rauchway, Rauchway. He's a professor of American history at the University of California, Davis. And he basically pins the transition around the turn of the 20th century. So highly influential Democrat named William Jennings Bryan blurred the party lines. So this is kind of where this stuff started. But it says that he says basically that Republicans didn't immediately adopt the opposite position of favoring.
What a surprise! Republicans didn't adopt it.
No.
Come on, I mean we don't see that nowadays.
Well, it wasn't as quick as I guess is what he's saying. It's like we hear about like transition. Like we don't. Like, I would naturally assume that this would be a slower process. But he says that they didn't immediately. It's a couple of decades, both parties are promising augmented federal government. So both parties were kind of saying, "Oh, big government, good for everybody," and then eventually, gradually, Republican rhetoric drifted into counter arguments. So the party's small government platform cemented into the 30s. So the big question is, why did Bryan and other turn-of-the-century Democrats start advocating for big government? The admission of the new Western states to the Union was they want the Democrats, typically the Southern Democrats, wanted to get into these states, and so they seized a way of getting into them by talking with the Republican federal expansions in the 60s and 70s that had turned out favorable to big businesses. And so they wanted to get a piece of that. And so they started talking about these being good things. And so both parties...
They sound like opportunists. No.
Oh, no. Well,
I'll be honest. I mean, that's a pretty opportunist
It's politics, man.
standpoint.
I mean, that is politics. It's opportunism. It is ingratiating yourself into your constituents to get what you want. Because let's face it, humans are greedy little critters. We don't live in this utilitarian world where everything is good, bad, easy to understand. It's people trying to gain power and gain status in a society like we have, and we see the extremes of it now. But they started off, trying to get those votes, because essentially Democrats don't exist if you don't get the votes. You need that kind of stuff. And so, from a business perspective, the Rauchway guy pointed out the loyalties of the parties did not really switch, but the rhetoric to a degree switched. And so, really, the core supporters, they don't, the Republicans remain throughout the party of bigger business. It's just in the earlier era, bigger business was really good for these big business entrepreneurs who were trying to get, and once they had the infrastructure, they didn't need it anymore. And so they didn't need that big government and its assistance to the big business. And so now they wanted the big government to kind of move along, get out of its way, so it can continue being this capitalistic machine. And then the Democrats, who had won all of those constituents, they wanted to keep the big business because it's the opposition to the Republican end, and that's kind of where their perspective switched. And further down in the article, there's a guy named James Cooper. He wrote one of the best little things, because this is how we're going to tie it into the skeptic nature and the religious concepts that we have. This James Cooper, he's down in the comments section, and kudos to him. He said, "Very well put, Natalie. I never really thought about it before. Democrats became more liberal because they are a party of the people, and the general populace became more liberal over time. Republicans became more conservative because less government interference suits big business quite well in the modern day, especially due to so much legislation already being in place." So the government had already grown quite a bit. That's my little bit. Anyways, continuing the quote, "However, big business alone doesn't bring votes to Republicans anymore, because Republicans and big businesses no longer dictate to their employees who they should vote for. So Republicans have had to appeal to the religious sector, and that is when all of the current troubles began." And that is awesome. And that's where it ties the economics into the religious world, that we see this counter blurring between the Republican Party and religion now.
Yeah, and one of the biggest quotes I got out of the article was one that said, the word, early on, businesses needed things that only a big government could provide, such as infrastructure development, a currency, tariffs. Once these things are in place, a small hands-off government was better for business. And I think that's the key here, Chris. I think
really
we could
is.
talk about this for weeks on end, and you know my position. I am a socialistic libertarian, so I lean very, very far left, and then some of my beliefs kind of fit into that very libertarian minimalistic point of view. And we were actually talking about minimalistic music earlier, ironically enough, and we both kind of admitted we like that type of music. So, Chris, you might be a little bit more libertarian than you thought, but that's the whole point, though, is right. They use the business, the big government platform, to make a bunch of money, set a bunch of rules, and now they're well off. We look at lobbying. Lobbying stems from that.
I should think so.
Yeah, that's and I get that lobbying has to be there sometimes. I get that, and that sometimes it does do good. It doesn't always do bad. It's not a Joe do bad. It's sometimes a Joe do good type thing. And we just sit there and think about, well, okay, now that we're progressing as a society and we've evolved, why wouldn't we go back and change some of these things? Why are we being so stubborn? Oh, that's right, greed. Oh, that's right, you want control. It's that white fucking male goddamn complex where they're like, yep, I got a small dick, so I gotta fucking do this.
Man.
Or, oh, I don't have enough fucking money because I only own, $2 million, or I only own 30% of the world's wealth. Well, fuck you. Fuck you, for Christ's sake. There's a lot of us that are starving. I live in a 3-bedroom, 900 square foot fucking house I'm doing a podcast in. And you want to talk to me about your multi-millions and blow it out your fucking ass. What the fuck are you going to do with it? You ain't going to take it to heaven, are you? If you can, you're going to make God rich because he's just going to take it from you. He's going to be like, I'm going to reuse this to prosper the gospel.
They're going to take it to heaven. Maybe they believe in the Egyptian god systems where...
yes, like ISIS or some shit like that.
One of the other things that we could tag into this is I've seen some memes going around, and there's one. It's a quick history lesson, and so it's one of these things that talks about the switch, and it uses it as a negative way, and it makes the Republicans look better. And I want to blow it to pieces right now because a quick history lesson: the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, 100% Republican support, 23% Democrat support. The 15th Amendment, right to vote for all, 100% Republican support, 0% Democrat support. 14th Amendment gave citizenship to free slaves, 94% Republicans, 0 Democrats. And then recently, for the Affordable Care Act, because I think Obamacare is a terrible name. Anyways, they got 0 Republican support and 86 Democrat support.
You just
it just drives.
I used it earlier.
It drives me nuts. I don't know why. It's just a pet peeve of mine. But those first 3 are from the previous era. We're talking slavery. We're talking voting. We're talking abolished slavery. Those are all when we were talking about there's a visible difference between the perspectives of the two parties when the Republican Party was very much like the current Democratic Party. And so that switch, that meme itself is false because there's a comparison. It's apples to oranges, or it's apples and oranges if you or old apples versus new apples and the switching and things like that. And so you look at recent things.
Bananas.
Yeah. Well, it's a terrible analogy, whatever. You look at recent things, though, and you look at Republican supports for things like civil rights versus Democrat supports for civil rights and all of the acts and things that they have, the Fair Housing Act, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. You can see the Republicans doing what you would expect them to do. They're against all of those things, and the Democrats are supporting all of those things. And you can see the switch in the past to now there. And so this is, obviously this is disinformation, misinformation, or twisting the facts to make the Republicans look better. When obviously, let's face it, if you asked the Republican Party and the Tea Party if they were going to abolish slavery today, you'd probably get a lot of dissents or negatives on that.
And as we walk away from this segment and we talk about, where the Republicans and where the Democrats are now and how we fit into this whole mix, and we talked about my bubble earlier, right, Chris? We talked about my bubble.
Your echo chamber.
And I've heard this argument, not when I was a Christian or not back in the day when I lived at home. I heard this discussion when I came out as an atheist. One of the things people wanted to attack was my liberal nature, wanted to go after me because I was a socialist, or they called me a communist, which doesn't make fucking sense. But I got called that. And that's the thing, though, Chris, is they said those things. And these memes that you just shared, this came up. That discussion came up. They tried to claim ownership for all this, and then a simple Google search said, "Oh, hey, by the way, you do know that Democrats are the old Republicans, and the Republicans are the new Democrats."
I've been trying to figure out where the Whigs went, but I need to get my history books out for that. The WHIG Whigs, yeah, I don't know, into the dustbin of history, I guess.
And so, what's encouraging about this segment is in reality, we're talking about words transcending, right? We're talking about transcending different words and different dialects, Republican, Democrat. And in the end, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. All that matters is that you have a desire to move humanity forward, to help others, and to make for a better place for our children or other people's children. Make sure you stay tuned with us, because in a few seconds, we're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics as we close, talking about Sam Harris and his internet rage. We'll be right back, everybody.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Now, back to the show.
I'd vote for dangerously deluded religious imbecile Ben Carson over Noam Chomsky? What? Oh man! Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. As we close the show out tonight, we have to look at this article and these other articles and all these crazy things. We have to examine Sam Harris and some of his statements about how he's going to vote for Ben Carson over Noam Chomsky. Like, I don't. How about this? I don't even understand why he wants to make a fucking comparison.
That was the start of this entire thing. I saw this, I'm assuming when you saw it, because the story broke basically the same time. To anyone who pays attention to that secular circle with the what's left of the four horsemen of atheism, with Hitchens gone and Dawkins on some seriously confusing rants.
Yeah, some child molester detail there, or something like that.
And then Sam Harris reaching into the politics like this. Dan Dennett has been nice and quiet and working on the mind, as he should be, because he's doing a great job. But this Sam Harris stuff is just confusing to me.
Yeah,
where and what he came from.
Exactly, and I'm anti the whole Four Horsemen thing anyway. I used to love it, love the analogy, love it. Fucking fuck. Damn, I shouldn't have done that. But I don't even like the analogy, anymore. Like, I've moved past it. I liked it when I started, right? I thought, hey, Four Horsemen, awesome wording. But it's all fucking white guys. What the fuck? Like, it was like an exclusionary club to begin with. And people are going to sit here and accuse me, and I'm sure how Randy, I'll call you on it. Maybe Randy's sitting here, he's like, oh, he's going to go on his anti-feminist rant. But exactly, there was no women either. And I get that atheism was a secluded little idea that kind of has evolved and people have taken on to it, but it's been around for a long time. The problem is their society has shut women out. But that's a topic for next week, as we'll get into. We're foreshadowing here.
I agree that the atheistic group, we do suffer from a bit of monotony, but we can talk about this, maybe trying to find ways to diversify And we have seen recent growth in those areas, but especially when it comes to like our matriarchs and patriarchs, and mostly patriarchs, but that we see that those are the people who are the leaders and the heads of this. Like Sam Harris has been considered one of Letters to a Christian Nation. It was a great book and got a lot of praise. And he did a nice job kind of breaking it down to a nice, comfortable, calm, rational discussion as to the ridiculousness of the Christian belief system. But he has been lately, he's superseding his neuroscientist area. I actually mistakenly said neurosurgeon on a few podcasts, or not on podcasts, on comments and things on the internet. But yes, neuroscientist.
What other podcasts are you joining? Are you cheating on me? Jesus.
No, you were cheating on me last time because you said I'm your the second co-host, or your other
You're my other co-host.
Yeah, that's what it was. So, anyways, I saw this, and you probably saw it around the same time, and I was confused. I just had to do some searches to find out what could ever, I guess, lead to that sentence. I'd vote for dangerously deluded religious imbecile Ben Carson over Noam Chomsky.
And honestly, I literally ignored it. I didn't read it. I didn't give a flying fuck. You know why? Because there's two reasons. One, because some of the media overhype this shit, and people do like to pick on Sam Harris. And the second reason is I don't give a flying fuck what Sam Harris says. Fuck that dude. That dude had a couple of good things. You want to know? Here, I'll sidetrack you. You want to know how much he charges to come speak? Just take a guess.
I'm gonna say over 10 grand.
No, not quite. So you overshot it a little bit there. I don't know.
All right, tell me to take a guess, man.
Yeah, fucker. Anywhere between 5 and 10 grand typically, and so.
Wow.
He does pro bono things, don't get me wrong. He doesn't always charge thousands of dollars to speak, and he is an accredited scientist in certain fields, but not this field. And he says some horribly fucking awful anti-Islamic things quite a bit, and he's been called out on it before. Not every time do I think he does, but he has before. But this article I just thought was fucking right-wing media propaganda bullshit. Like somebody was just picking on Sam Harris again.
That was my first thought too. And then all of a sudden, everyone on Facebook, yes, I still use Facebook regularly. Everyone was starting to just attack. One of the guys that I interviewed a while ago in Turkey, he was just harping on Sam Harris, and I was like, "What is going on? This is insane." Because I understand that some people critique him. I've seen Sam Harris being critiqued all the time, but this was a cascade across everybody that's usually pretty progressive in my my friend circles. So I had to look into it, and I just sourced the story from Raw Story, which usually doesn't give you the best data. They're kind of a secondary and popular trending, but this is one of the ones I found, and it sources what he had said. It said, given the choice between Noam Chomsky and Ben Carson in terms of the totality of their understanding of what's happening now in the world, I'd vote for Ben Carson every time, Harris stated. Ben Carson is a dangerously deluded religious imbecile. Ben Carson does not, and then there's a shortening of the sentence, the fact that he is a candidate for the president is a scandal, but at the very least, he can be counted on to sort of get this one right. He understands that jihadists are the enemy. Wow. I know a little bit about Noam Chomsky. I know that he's considered one of the most intelligent political scientists. He's a linguist. This guy has some serious intellectual clout. Massive intellectual clout. He's written, as far as I know, maybe 100 books or just a huge pile of stuff. What do you know about Noam?
He's somebody that's been around the secular community. He was somebody that kind of came up quite a bit when I started to do some research into some more liberal type leanings and some more. I don't know if you. I hate calling them liberal leanings. I really don't like that word. But when I started moving away from some of the conservative nature, some of the conservative things that I believed in, Noam Chomsky was one of the individuals that filled my radar. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
I've read some of his books before, and that's why. That's how I knew him. So when you mentioned him, I didn't understand how him and Sam Harris related.
Yeah, I didn't either. So that was my further jumping down the rabbit hole. The next place I stopped was just to find out who the heck he is. He's an American linguist, philosopher, cognitive scientist, and a logician. He's a political commentator. Obviously, a lot of his books are social, but he's a social justice activist, and an anarcho-syndicalist. advocate. So that's a new topic to me. I still really don't exactly understand what it is, but he's considered to be a very forward thinker, and he has grown up in kind of an unstructured style, and that's one of the things that I found when I read this alternate org refutation of what Sam Harris tried to do and failed when he engaged with Noam Chomsky. And so I'm like, okay, that's got to be it. That's got to be the reason why there's a tip. There was a debate. Well, it wasn't really a debate. I hate to say it, but it seems like Sam trolled Noam Chomsky, trying to, I guess, gain points, steal some points or some popularity points by engaging with who is considered one of the smartest people as far as worldwide politics and logic and all that kind of stuff is in the soup of humanity. He's considered a great and very wide thinker. So Sam's trying to dig into him, and he feels like he's trolling him, man.
It could be, or maybe he's trying to ride his coattails.
Oh. Yeah, it could be, because they kind of have the same kind of area. They're both in like that neuro realm. But the thing that when if you go to Sam Harris on his blog, we're gonna include the link in here. But he has a thing that he called the name of his blog that he posted was The Limits of Discourse, and he basically published everything that he had with this discourse. If you can call it a discourse, that's a stretch of the imagination as far as I'm concerned. But he essentially contacted Noam and said, these are the kind of things I want to do. And then he said that after Noam finally contacted him, he said that, well, I want to publish this, so we should continue this discourse, speaking as if it was going to be released publicly. And so Noam immediately was just kind of off by that, like, what are you talking about? So everything I'm saying is on the record, is basically what Sam was trying to tell him. And then he goes on to attack a few of Noam's positions and to push a few ideas and a few things. And right from the get-go, Noam, he's known for being kind of abrasive, kind of aloof, and that is obviously, it's in his responses. It's just the way he is. He's short, he's contrite, he's very not so much condescending, but it feels like it when he writes to you. He's like, oh, as you should no doubt have understood, or oh, you know that you were wrong, and so you have not rescinded your fallacious claim. Like, he just comes off as like a professor who really does know more than you, and he just pushes it that way. So there's that egotistical thing that he could I guess hurt when you're having a conversation with him. But it starts off at the beginning of things, and I don't know if you read the whole discourse, but it's alarming. But on the alternate.org,
I read a lot of it, honestly. Like, after you mentioned this, and then I go, there is people are bitching about Sam Harris. God damn it, man! I tried to ignore this shit, and you brought it into my fucking boat, and motherfucker, man, I should pray to God and maybe he'd fix this. I mean, he does fix things like this type of things, not cancer for kids, but he'll fix you getting your shit off my Facebook page. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to read it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh. Yeah, and you're right. Norm's kind of a little condescending. He's kind of a dick. And I think it's because he doesn't think he should have to have this conversation with Sam Harris, and he's probably trying to sit here going, who the fuck are you? Why are you calling me out, for fuck's sake? Like, do you really understand who you're talking to? And I don't agree with him in his condescending nature. I don't understand why he would want to be that aggressive, but I do get the frustration because Sam Harris, he's a linguist, man. He's really good at talking about things, right? I guess that's stupid to say he's good at talking about things, but he is good at what he talks about. The problem is that not everything he talks about is factual or worth listening to.
Yeah, some of his logic, some of the things in the little ladders that he climbs, sometimes he takes a weird trail. Sometimes he goes off in a place that you just, I don't really get it, Sam. So, I mean, he's not infallible. That's basically what we're saying. Like, we put Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Dennett and Hitchens on these pedestals, and, you know, as time has gone on, we see their failings. We see the errors in some of their judgments. We need to concentrate on the good things and discard the bad things. But lately, it's just like they're kind of throwing more and more bad stuff out. And one of the things in this that really struck me, for the discourse between Sam and Noam, and it's probably where it became a trolling thing for me, was there's a section where Harris is he's questioning intentions as to That is an important thing, and Noam is kind of discarding intentions. Is what Harris is intoning that, and so he says that with really good intentions, the deaths of people and attack and destruction is good or better than if they're retaliating from really bad intentions. So some of the examples he gives are the 9/11 attacks from the terrorists were really bad intentions. So our retaliations, even though they resulted so far as 500,000 is the general estimate as far as the Iraqi war, that we had good intentions to liberating and freeing the Iraq country, that those good intentions outweigh the negative intentions that killed 3,000 people in the United States. And Noam is a little bit deeper than that, and he kind of pushes that aside and says that no, the intentions are still bad, even if you had good intentions, or you think you had good intentions. In a section, Noam says that I've written a book about this, an entire book. You should check it out. And Harris writes back, he says, "Noam, we appear to be running in the weeds here." He then confesses, "I have not read Radical Priorities," the book that Noam mentions that is about intentions. So Sam is just saying, you're wrong, and he doesn't read the source material. He doesn't come prepared with sources. So he attacks Chomsky in a variety of ways, and he gets rebuked, and then he says that I haven't actually looked at that source material, so I don't have a response to your, hey, you're wrong. That to me is he's unprepared, and he should not have been going there with this. He should have been more prepared and better source his ideas. And then the other area is, do you know about the medical facility bombing from Clinton? Did you get through?
I got through the article. I did not know that existed or was something of any imperative value until you presented this article to me. But yeah, I read about it, and that's actually a really awful thing. And it's funny because they argue about that, right? And they argue about it, and Sam is insistent that Norm's wrong.
Yeah, I don't. It was the Al Shifa pharmaceutical plant in Sudan, and the situation was during the Clinton administration, a bunch of embassies in Africa had been bombed, and so the Clinton administration had come to some kind of information that said that this Al Shifa pharmaceutical plant in Sudan had been making chemical weapons, and they blew it up. Estimates are that approximately one person was murdered or killed or collateral damage. That's another term that Sam uses in this discourse that kind of sent a chill down my spine, as human lives and collateral damage. I'm not comfortable with that. But approximately one or so people were killed in this bombing from the Clinton administration. But the indirect destruction to the people that were hurt from this plant being destroyed was from malaria and things like that. They say that around 10,000 people probably died due to shortages of medicine that would have come from this pharmaceutical plant. So even though Clinton's administration had good intentions of retaliating and possibly destroying a chemical weapons facility, the consequences, regardless of the intentions, were significantly worse than any kind of bombings to embassies that happened. And so that's what Chomsky's talking about, because Harris puts this Al Shifa bombing on this really good thing, that it was intended to be good, and it was still a good thing even because of its intentions. And Chomsky breaks it down and just rips him apart. And at that point, the article was won in my book. And so we really need to tell Sam, listen, stick to your area of expertise. That's kind of my conclusion from all this. Dawkins was wonderful in The Selfish Gene. As an evolutionary biologist, I loved him. He was amazing. As a philosopher, he has some nice ideas. He's been questionable of late, a little bit of callous and abrasive. Harris the same way. Like, he did some nice stuff. I love it when he talks about the mind and neuroscience. But when he starts talking politics with some of the more established people, essentially the best people the United States has to offer, I really think he should back down.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I don't have a problem with some of Sam Harris's politics or some of his beliefs or some of his thoughts. And the one thing that turned me off, I'll be honest, with some of these articles was just the headlines. The one the Salon article was scoring the Noam Chomsky scam Harris debate. And it's like, why are we scoring this? I don't give a flying fuck who won or who lost in that aspect. Don't tell me. Let me come to my own conclusion. But the worst was, it says how the professor knocked out the atheist. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait, we're talking about Noam Chomsky, right? This dude is practically an atheist. He's the guy that basically said, well, when you can define God, then I could tell you whether I'm an atheist or not.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the original nihilist atheist. And I admire him because, you know, in his social justice movements and his desire to create a more humanistic world, and I know he doesn't abide by that word, but to a point, he's creating a more humanistic world. He's fucking over the norms. He's mixing the goddamn boat up. But what really, really bothered me about Sam Harris's arguments, and this is, you know, we got to get out of here and let everybody go home and go to bed, but the biggest problem I have is that Sam Harris is trying to basically argue the lesser of two evils. He's basically trying to ignore a morality argument, an objective morality argument, and I don't even know if he's objectively moral or subjectively moral. I don't know where he falls on that spectrum, but he's trying to get rid of and push out this objective morality that killing is wrong. That even if we need to do it because we feel justified, that it doesn't make it any more right. It doesn't mean it's a little bit less of a slap on the hand. It's like, I don't want to knock Chris over for, you know, spilling bong water on my couch. You know? I mean, he brings his fucking bong and dirty-ass bong water every time he comes over. But we got to look at it and go, yeah, you're right to an extent. There's a little bit less, but it's still wrong. It's still not something we should embrace. And like Sam Harris, you're toting this as a fun thing, as a thing that we should all buy into. Come the fuck on. Get over it, dude. And I'll get, and no offense, but Noam Chomsky has been around a long time and has done a lot of good in the world. And it doesn't excuse some of his stupid arguments or his arrogance in his conversation. That's not an excuse. But we got to give the guy credit a little bit. He's changed the world. He argues a lot in the UN, courts. And it's just sad to see somebody like Sam Harris seek out an argument. And it's like, we don't need an argument for argument's sake, right? I mean, why the fuck do we need that? We need to have discourse.
Sam does some weird things in this conversation, and one of the things that I was really surprised on, and it's in the alternate article, is they kind of talk about Sam Harris's history and the way he likes to think. He is very hierarchical. When he thinks about things, it's levels of. There's at one point he leaves this three tier system of good, middle, and bad, or bad, middle, good. He thinks in these linear layers of things, and this is typical of neuroscientists and people that are very scientific and very numeric. And then he talks a little bit about Noam Chomsky's past and the way he kind of was brought up. And he was brought up in what we would say is a very unstructured world. He kind of had this chaotic this upbringing as far as his intellectual puberty, so to speak. And so, like, the way he thinks is kind of this unclassified, unhinged, it's open and clear, and he does things differently in the way that he thinks. And Sam's difference specifically to his is clearly shown, and it's a really great little piece at the end of the alternate article that explains kind of what these differences are between the way they think and why Noam comes to his conclusions, and they seem to be a little bit better than the ultimatums of Sam's. And so I just wanted to touch on that last little bit because it's cool to see a different way of thinking and how those difference in thinking and difference in upbringing can kind of change the way you come to conclusions, which essentially is the most important part here. We need to try to think differently to try to solve these problems. And Noam thinks a little differently, and he seems to be doing a pretty good job because he's been doing this over 60 years. He's thought deeper and longer and harder about stuff that, I mean, he wrote his first book or something before Sam was even born. And so that kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about, how long Noam has been considered one of the top intellectuals in this area.
Well, my friend, I think that's the cue. I think that means right. we gotta go home. Isn't that the music? Isn't that what Jeremiah Bannister always says? We're gonna steal a cue from the band.
Yeah, Jeremiah and Joe Bannister with Paleo Radio. We are stealing your styles.
As the music plays and as we wrap up for another awesome episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, like, share, express your thoughts about what we have to say. And you won't agree with us all the time. If you did, it'd be worthless. Why the fuck would you want to listen to something you agree with them? That makes no sense to me. Hell, I listened to Republican radio for a long time, and I fucking fully disagree with them.
I like listening to myself. I don't know what to tell
You do. You're a narcissist. You're closer to Sam Harris than anybody knows. Just kidding. But in all seriousness, make sure you guys share anything with us that you want. You can email us, again, cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. You can send all Chris Hanna the hate mail, and you can send all me the awesome mail. We'll do another mailbag here as we've gotten some responses from some other people over the last few weeks. So as we wrap up next week, you can expect more awesomeness from Cellar Door Skeptics, as we're going to tackle another segment about marijuana. We're going to talk about the dead end of sexual sin, and I have an interview with a gentleman named Aaron Adair, and his last name is spelled Adair. Google him. We have an awesome prelude to the holidays, because I'm excited, Chris. I fucking love Christmas. I know you don't. You're a fucking Grinch over there. I got a Grinch I got a Grinch outfit for you. I do. I'm gonna give you my Grinch outfit, and every week you're here, you're gonna fucking wear this outfit, and I'm gonna post pictures of this shit. But he doesn't like Christmas. I don't know. We had to have this conversation before the show tonight.
Talk about it on the show. We'll get some reasons why I'm kind of like, meh, whatever. It's a nice holiday, but it's not a really big deal. I don't get super, super excited. Just, yeah, great. I'll see the family and have some fun.
Yeah. And I love Christmas. I think it's one of the best times, and I got a whole week off this year. Anyway, make sure you stay tuned for more Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you guys, and remember to prepare for the revolution. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.